Welcome back. Now we are at decoupling report, how to explain and analyze. Remember, scan to get a 3-day free plus so that you can generate this for your customers and help them with decoupling. Now, earlier we were at this part here where we have generated a property decoupling report. Step 1, generating the report. The next step that we'll need to do is save it. After you have saved it, you can always extract the report. Say for example, you go to reports and you look at it, what have you got, right? It's here. Click open report. You have the report in front of you. How to explain the report? In this case, you have a property decoupling report prepared for John. Property is to be decoupled. It is a private residential property of which the valuation is 2.3 million. The outstanding loan is 250,000. Okay, let's assume that they do not decouple and they are intending to buy a new property. So then what would it be? Cost of purchasing comparison for new property. Cost without decoupling. That means that Mary would go and buy another property because she owns one property and Mary would intend to buy the next property, for instance. Then Mary would be faced with if she buys a 1.5 million property, in this case she'll be faced with 44,600 of buyer's stamp duty and a 12% additional buyer's stamp duty because she is Singaporean buying the second property. If she is Singapore PR buying the second property, it will be 15%, it will be stated here. And the legal fees and so on. So without decoupling, Mary, or at least John and Mary, they would jointly incur $227,700. That's the cost without decoupling if they were to buy a new property. In this case, be it Mary or be it John, assuming they're both Singaporean. Now, what is the cost with decoupling? If they decouple the property, then Mary would no longer own or be part owner of property 1. In this case, Mary, which is mortgage 1 Mary, Singaporean, she would already have not owned that property together with John, and at the time when she buy the next property, she would have owned no property. And assuming when they bought the property, it is after 5 years. In this case, I've actually put the date of purchase at intend to purchase March 2021. Earlier, the part I have actually indicated that when they bought it, the property, the first property. In this case, it is more than 3 years. So there is 0 seller stamp duty. We can go and check the date, right? If you put it to a date where there is a seller stamp duty, this cost will be indicated here. Legal fees, you're free to set it. It could be higher, it could be lower, depending on the prevailing market competition and situation. Right? And then the current property buyout cost. What would it cost for the current property buyout cost? What is the buyout cost? In this case, John would be faced with a buyer's stamp duty and on the 55% of the property that Mary owns, because Mary owns 55% and John owns 45%, right? So John needs to pay the buyer's stamp duty on 55%, and in this case of a $2.53 million property, the price of 55% of 2.3 million is 1.265 million, right? And that's 35,000 stamp duty. And John, owning no other property except the one that he shares with Mary, has no additional buyer's stamp duty. There's only legal fees and valuation fees. And for Mary, she should be buying a new property, purchasing cost. She would be buying a new property at $44,600 for buyer's stamp duty. zero additional buyer stamp duty, legal fees for new property purchase at 2005, valuation at $600, and the total cost between John and Mary for decoupling would be $88,500 versus the cost without decoupling of $227,700. So the cost with decoupling and without decoupling, it's very obvious. If you are a property agent and your customer or your property buyer is planning to buy a new property, and in which case if both of them has adequate income, then what would happen to the customer is that they will not be buying a new property if they are not able to decouple. If you're unable to explain and guide them on decoupling, then you will not be winning the deal, right? So that is to explain the cost of purchasing without decoupling and cost of purchasing with decoupling. So that explains this part now.